49ers dropped a pretty important game in the monsoon. Let's find out why next on Niner Nate's Nonsense. Hello and welcome to Niner Nate's Nonsense on a sobering Tuesday evening where things just didn't seem to go our way. Niner Nate here with you once again, and as always with me is Jamal Armstrong here on Tuesdays on the channel. How are you doing, man?
Man, I could be doing a lot better. I definitely think we didn't have the week one that we were expecting. I'm not going to sit here and freak out, to be honest about it. There's definitely a lot to improve on, but I am happy that it was week one, and wacky things do happen during week one sometimes. 49ers have been prone to slow starts. Like I said, I'm not going to freak out. There's a lot, 16 games ahead of us. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are first in the division right now. I'm willing to bet a lot of money that won't be the case by the end of the season. So I'm not doing great, but I'm also not freaking out. There's a long season ahead, and I think we're going to see the best of the 49ers starting this week.
Well, we'll get into the Bears game. Let's talk a little bit about the Seattle Seahawks real quick. Last night, they take care of Russell Wilson at home after scoring 0 points at the half and having a defense that legit couldn't stop the run. Nathaniel Hackett just decided, don't want to run anymore, even though they couldn't stop the run. So I want to tell people before we really get into this Bears analysis to talk about what went wrong in Chicago. The Seattle Seahawks are dog shit. I'm sorry. You could, I don't care what anybody says. The Seattle Seahawks are fucking terrible. And if the 49ers don't win, we can freak out next week on this show. But they are awful. They are worse than the Bears. The stuff they were doing was, I just can't get over the fact that they actually won that game. But we'll talk more about them. Looking forward to having Jason Puckett hopefully join me and Kevin on Thursday. We'll see what happens there. Hopefully Kevin doesn't blow a gasket talking to someone from Seattle.
That's got to be awesome.
Jamal, let's talk a little bit about for the next, 30 to 45 minutes. I just want to talk about the Bears game. We'll focus on that. I'll give you my analysis and then I'd love to hear yours. I think that it was really just a bad situation. They were up 10. I don't even think it was that they got confident. I think that it was it seemed like the turnovers and the penalties really cost them their ability to drive down the field. I mean, Trey Lance, for instance, drives down the field really well. And then, something dumb happens with Debo, turn the ball over. Trey Lance wasn't bad in this game. I don't think anybody who actually understands what they're watching thinks that Trey Lance was bad. My biggest thing with this game was it really felt like a preseason game. It felt like a team that got their 10 points, took their starters out, and relaxed the rest of the way. And Justin Fields took advantage of two specific, breaks in coverage, and that's how they won this game. And by the time that those breaks in coverage happened and the 49ers had the chance to come back and try and win, the monsoon had become too much for any quarterback in this league to throw in. It was way too much. And so by then, it got to the point where it's just get out of here healthy. And that's why I think the 49ers basically did what they did towards the end of that game in the last 7 minutes. I mean, Jamal, I think Justin Fields had something like 14 or 19 yards.
19 yards.
With 5 minutes left in the third quarter. So to tell me that the Niners defense isn't good, I don't believe you. To tell me that Trey Lance isn't a good football player, I don't believe you, because the fact is he had his team with a lead. He was winning. His defense was playing well, despite the fact that they were getting penalties all game. It was specifically Dre Greenlaw's breaking coverage. And I guess I read somewhere today that it was Hufanga was actually the assignment on Dante Pettis, which is sort of interesting because he had such a great game outside of that.
Right.
But, I mean, without those two plays, without the Debo fumble, we could say without all day, right? It just really felt like this was one of those games where one thing leads to another and they lose. And I think that I would be more worried as a Packer fan than I am as a 49er fan right now, because they look like absolute dog shit against a team that is in their division. So I'd love to know what you think of this whole situation. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to blow the hell out of the Seahawks out. Like, you know what that saying goes, following an emotional win generally leads to disappointment. The Seattle Seahawks probably won their Super Bowl last night because they're probably not going to win many more games. To beat Russell Wilson at home after, I guess they believe that he badmouthed them. Whatever. You don't boo the greatest player in your franchise, but this is not the Niner Nate's fucking talk shit on the Seahawks podcast, so we're not going to do that. But Jamal, I'd love to know, what were your initial thoughts on the loss on Sunday?
Man, I hate to make this like an echo chamber, but I agree with you on a lot of that. And I've been saying the same thing when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks and what we saw last night versus what we could potentially see this week. I almost consider it like college football. Not that I'm calling the Seahawks like a college level team, but I consider it like,
I mean, you can. They are a college level football team. They're terrible.
Right. Let's get our shots in when we can, right? Get our shots in on the field. It's never a problem. But it's interesting because, like you just said, that arguably could be their Super Bowl. And I think wacky things just in general happen in week one. I mean, if we're going to be just blunt about it, teams are probably the most healthy they're ever going to be in week one. Injuries kind of happen from there. We saw what happened last night. Jamal Adams got hurt. He's likely out for the season. We don't know for sure. There's been other few injuries around the league already as well, too. Dak Prescott, TJ Watt. So injuries do happen, right? But you're generally going to get the best effort. You're generally going to get the best. I don't want to say your best performance in general, but the intensity level, I think, is going to be pretty high. Although I also agree with you on your point about it being like an extension of the preseason. Something different this year versus, I think, years past. It was like 2.5 weeks. I think it was 17 total days between the last preseason game and the start of week one for all teams. So 17 games. When you think about the NFL and you think about the players, what goes into getting ready for a game, not only on a week-to-week basis, but on a day-to-day basis. What about practices that they have to do, right? These guys are creatures of habit. Almost every single one of them are creatures of habit. There's a certain schedule, routine that they need to have, certain foods certain guys like to eat. They do certain things during the season that they might not do during the off season, right? So going from training camps and, off season mini camps and things like that, and then finishing up your final preseason game in years past where you're kind of used to kind of jumping into football, relatively quick after that, you're seeing 17 days off or 17 days of not top tier, high level,
not hitting
action,
somebody, right? Not hitting somebody.
Exactly. It's not that same level of intensity. So talking about the 49ers coming into this game, and not even just the Niners, you can talk about teams in general coming into this game and seeing wacky scores.
The AFC Bengals, championship
right? Four
team,
interceptions, right?
He should have thrown 5. One was called back because of a pass interference. So he technically threw 5 interceptions, and he lost to a team with Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. And you're telling me that team that was the AFC champions didn't have some sort of rust from the fact that there was 17 days between games, 17 days between hitting somebody. Right. And I don't think they played their starters at all in preseason.
Right. Right. And that's the point right there, right? Like, it's going to take some of these guys some time to get back into a rhythm. And if I can tie this back to the 49ers, I can't sit here and say that the monsoon, the rain, or the weather didn't play
real quick. Let's laugh at someone stupid right here. The Bengals would have won if they played Jimmy G. What are we talking about here?
Man,
what are we doing?
This dude Polo's always on it, man. What's up to Throwback too? I know he's saying hi to Nate and myself. Good to see you in here, buddy. Appreciate your support.
I'm trying to get better at responding to people who comment. I'm like, most of the time the comments just go and I don't click them because we're in conversation and I just lose track of time. But continue what you were saying, Jamal. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, not a problem. So no, I was just talking about tying it back into the 49ers and getting back on track. I mean, listen, if you don't have George Kittle in your first start, Elijah Mitchell gets hurt in the second quarter, I believe it was. Things kind of shift, right? And you're with a first year starting quarterback making his third and a half, because Trey did start that half game at the Seattle Seahawks. He's starting his third and a half game, right? And what have we said all offseason whether you're a 49 Jimmy Garoppolo, whether you're Trey Lance, Stan, or not. We've all said there's going to be ups and downs, right? I never expected Trey Lance to have to carry this team. That being said, you look at his stat line. I believe it was like 13 of 28, 164 yards, no touchdowns, a pick. You've got to be able to add some context to that too as well, right? There were a couple drops. Debo had a couple drops himself. Debo only had 2 catches, 14 yards. Now, when you're playing in that type of weather, you can't expect guys to go off for 100, 150 plus yards. I'm not saying that, especially when it comes to Debo Samuel, because he's a guy who's a weapon. You're going to use him in the backfield. You're going to use him in the slot. You're going to put him out wide, right? He's a weapon. You have the ability to do that. But at the same time, there were a couple crucial plays, crucial third downs that we did go to Debo Samuel, and he wasn't able to make a catch. Part of that is the weather. Part of that, in my personal opinion, is also just the fact that they're still building their chemistry. Debo was working on some things, working on a contract this offseason. It was Brandon Ayuk that was with Trey Lance most of the way. And that connection, you can see the chemistry with Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance already. To see I know Brandon Ayuk didn't have a crazy amount of catches or anything like that, but when the weather was still good enough, the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter, Trey was great on some deep overs. He was getting some deep crosses to Brandon Ayuk and looked awesome. Their chemistry is really good, really good. And I still expect a really big year out of Brandon Ayuk.
I think some of the throws Trey Lance made on Sunday were really impressive. I think anyone 100%. Who's being like, you see people in spaces or just trolls being like Trey's ass, and all that stuff. And stuff. Like, when you watch him, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't see how this is a bad quarterback, and it could because I want him to be great, but when I watch Trey Lance play football, I almost said Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
When I watched Trey Lance play football, there's nothing about him I saw that was like actively bad. Like, sure,
right.
Some of the accuracy stuff is still there. He shouldn't have missed that throw to Juszczyk. Juszczyk,
right?
That guy has to be Croft. The most unlucky dude. Croft. I'm sorry, that was Croft.
Yep.
Yeah, I was about to say he's the most unlucky dude in the world. Nobody can hit him when he's open. But that Croft throw, that should have been, a better throw. Mm-hmm. The thing is the
kid knows it too.
And he said it. He did say it after the game. He said that I should have thrown a better ball. I do think this kid just wants to be great. And so you see him, I think we've seen him play 3.5 games, as you said, but let's just talk about it. I think in each game we've already seen improvements. We've seen him better. He was better in this game than he was in the Texan game for what he was dealing with. The fact that he was dealing with, a team with nothing to lose in the rain, field that was not really ready for this season to start, it felt like. A lot of those factors, and you could say I'm making excuses for him. A lot of those factors, plus the fact that this is his first actual NFL start, as the starting quarterback of this team, I think he did pretty well. And I think that a lot of people are blaming the offensive line. I don't even know if the offensive line was actually that bad. I think Mike McGlinchey was probably the worst, but I think that's a lot of growing pains. Mike McGlinchey hasn't played football in over almost a year, and he was dealing with an injury that basically could have sidelined him forever. And so Mike McGlinchey is going to be the guy that people are going to have to live with the growing pains. They're going to have to be like, okay, that was bad. And you can say it's bad, but this is Mike McGlinchey's their tackle. I don't know how else you want me to say it. That's the tackle. And there's going to be times where he is awful, like awful. But he's going to be the tackle for the rest of the season. They're not going to bench him. This is probably his last year as a Niner. And we just have to hope that over the course of the season, he gets better as we continue on playing different teams. I mean, if I had to be a betting man, I think they're going to look a lot better this week. They're going to look better in Denver, and then they're going to fucking destroy the Rams, because this is who these guys are. They start slow, and they get better. And, it took a really long time last year for them to be better. I think at one point they were like 3-5 or something like that.
100%.
But they're playing a Broncos team that's not fully there. They're playing a Seahawks team that is absolute buns. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jamal, they are terrible. They have nothing that scares me. Their corners and safeties don't even know what the fuck they're looking at half the time.
Right.
Russell Wilson's
not there no more. They're starting a
Russell
rookie.
Russell Wilson just wasn't challenging them. And then when the Broncos run the ball, they'd get like 12, 13 yards. So, the problems they suffered from this game are not going to be here. There's no monsoon. You're not dealing with a pass rush that's any good. I mean, I think people were kind of surprised that the Bears actually had a pass rush. I think a lot of people were like, oh, there's nobody on this team. I think we talked about it last week. There's nobody on this team. Their pass rush was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, Dominic
And
Robinson, a guy I was high on in the draft, had
yeah,
what 2 sacks? He had 1 sack himself, and he broke up a couple plays in the backfield running as well. Credit that kid. He had a great game. I gave him
and then
his credit. And then Robert Quinn.
the fact that the field conditions were so bad, I felt like it was very hard for wide receivers to get separation. Even for the Bears. The only reason Dante Pettis was wide open was because of a missed assignment. The Bears just didn't miss any assignments or missed assignments that big, right? The 49ers missed the assignment and it paid, but nobody was getting wide open in this game. Even the Trey throw that everyone keeps posting, that's a throw where that is just a seed. That is literally just in the ball where it needs to go in the right spot where nobody else can get it. And that's the kind of throws you have to make in situations like that where nobody's getting separation because the field is terrible. They can't move. It was a bad situation paired with the fact that they kept getting all these penalties. And I don't know if that was Kyle not having them prepared, or I think, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Jamal. I think when you don't play any of your starters in the preseason finale, this is what's going to happen every time.
Right. And it's
such a Nate, they played no starters at all.
Right. And it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you don't play them all at all, that's more than 17 days that they're not playing football, right? I said from the final game up
they didn't
until
even play
week
in the second game either. They only played in the first one.
Exactly. So you're in a position where if you're not playing in those games, you had, as a fan, you had better hope and pray that practices are that intense. And based off everything we'd heard, they've been intense, right? But is it game speed? Are you really up to game? Do you have that type of endurance? I can't say so. So when you look at this game, you get into a situation where, just look at the stats, Nate. Let's be real. 331 total yards to their 204. 155 passing for us to their 105. The Niners defense
isn't bad. It was the undisciplined. Think about it this way, Jamal. This is basically equivalent of Clayton Kershaw not doing spring training except for the first spring training week and then not playing until the home opener against the Giants. That's what it is, right? And the surprising part was how talented Nick Bosa and Kinlaw and all them still looked. But the problem is I think that the Niners roster is different than a lot of rosters where these guys are good. They're always going to be good. There's not going to be bad. I don't think anybody on defense is bad except for Greenlaw, and that's a different story altogether. The problem is the little mistakes you learn to work on, or just to make sure you're not making, or to do them in the preseason so you're not doing them in the season. That stuff didn't happen. And so this tremendous football team with all the talent in the world goes in there and makes the Bears look stupid for the whole first half. But when it comes down to the little things that they didn't make the mistakes, they didn't learn the things in the preseason, they collapsed.
Right. I got to be honest, man. I think in this game, if you look at this game, it's not a game you can box scout to tell you how good a quarterback did or didn't play, but you can legitimately look at this box score and say, wow, how did the 49ers lose? There's a couple sections or a couple categories which clearly give it away. You talked about it. We all agree. Penalties. How about 12 penalties for 99 yards to their 3 for 24? How about fumbles lost? How about our 1 to their none? How about interceptions thrown? Now that's even. They both threw 1. But you look at time of possession, dominated. You look at total yards, dominated. You look at passing yards. I can't say dominated, but we were better. You look at rushing yards, we dominated. Even yards per play, our 5 to their 3.6. And then you just look at the quarterbacks, the way that they both played. You said it earlier. We were about 6 minutes, 40 seconds through the third quarter, and Justin Fields still only had 19 passing yards. What is the difference in that game? How did the 49ers lose? How about they happened to make a couple key plays, literally 2 throws. 2 throws on 2 broken coverages was the difference in that game. Literally. It sounds crazy. If you go back and look at the game, watch it again, it's hard. I usually am not one that's going to give you like a definitive. That was the game. We weren't able to put the game away the way we probably should have during those first 3 quarters, not letting the 49ers off the hook on that. But when it was time for us to throw the ball to get back into the game, let's be real, the conditions didn't really allow us to. You look at Trey Lance, he had a couple smoke screens, right, that he threw that weren't completed. Why? The ball was so slippery, and on those screens, you have to be able to get the ball out quickly. You also look at the way Kyle used him as well, too. I think he had 8 carries, but 9 designed runs. If I can remember correctly, there was a couple QB powers, zone reads, QB draws, and then obviously 1 QB sneak as well too. So in that in that scenario, in that weather, I'm totally okay with that. You're gonna run the ball. Like that's going to happen. But you look at the score and you say, how did we lose? How about Dre Greenlaw? He had a couple undisciplined penalties. And the 49ers in general. I'm not just going to blame him, although he's going to get a bulk of his blame. The 49ers in general were not as settled into this game. They weren't as disciplined as they should be. The Chicago Bears got the W. That is a W for them. But I do believe the 49ers gave this game away. We had every reason to win this game. Had it not been those 2 plays, they probably get honestly we probably win 10-3 had those 2 plays not happened, because we would have ended those drives. There would have been no extended drives for them, and that's 2 plays that were not broken coverage, which leads to them not scoring. We can probably win this game 10-3, a lot like we won in Washington 9-0.
And it's funny we talk about the fact that Danny Gray was inactive. I think that Danny Gray is inactive because the 49ers weren't planning to throw the ball. You watch that first half game plan, they were content just running the ball with their quarterback, their running back, their wide receiver, whatever, and throwing the ball when they absolutely needed to. They were not going to throw the ball deep. This is not one of those games. Seattle will be one of those games. There will be a time
100%.
where someone is wide the fuck open and Trey Lance is either going to hit him or he's not. And if Trey Lance hits him, they're going to blow the Seahawks out. And if he doesn't, it's going to be closer. And that's honestly that's the hard truth. This was a game where Kyle's plan was to run the ball. Kyle was not going to let Trey throw. That was never going to happen. There was just no way it was. I mean, when you're seeing the kind of rain we were seeing at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the fact is it got better. It got better right in the first half, but it's still, you saw what happened an hour before that. It was terrible. They're squeegeeing a brand new field. By the end of that game, the numbers were gone, and they were projecting them on the field. Like, by the time it became a monsoon again, the Bears were up. Like, I think they were already up 4 points, 3 or 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
And the 49ers weren't going to be able to win. It was it just wasn't possible.
It was more than 3, because I remember we needed a touchdown, and we couldn't throw the ball. We needed to throw the ball then, and we couldn't throw the ball the way we needed to because the weather was affecting it that much, legitimately.
Exactly. And so, but with that paired with the fact that Elijah Mitchell, the starting running back, got hurt, it's very hard to immediately go to your second running back and see success.
Can we talk about that?
Kyle should have. We can talk about that. That'll be the next thing we talk about. I think maybe we should have ran Debo a lot more. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, why are we running Debo? Well, it's a downpour and we can't throw the ball and we can't do anything else. Why don't you put the ball in the hands of your best player and let him score? And so people who complain about Debo Samuel running the ball too much, no. Debo should have had the ball more when you're down and you need to run the ball and it's monsooning. I understand he fumbled. I get that. He's still the best player on the entire team that's not named Trent Williams. So, I mean, at what point do you just let him just do it? The problem was they started letting Trey throw, and that's why through the interception, the ball slipped out of his hand. He didn't know where to go with it. They're just trying to throw the ball, and it's monsooning. You want to try to throw the football in a monsoon? I don't. But
no.
Let's talk about the running backs. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Right.
So Elijah Mitchell's probably gone till November, most likely.
Mm-hmm. 8 weeks at minimum, probably.
Jeff Wilson is supposed to be running back 1. Mm-hmm. I think it should be Jordan Mason. What I saw from Jordan Mason in preseason, and I understand it's preseason, they're going against a bunch of guys who are probably going to work at Starbucks in a week. What I saw shows me he should be the starting running back at the Seattle Seahawks, because the Seattle Seahawks can't stop anybody anyway, right?
Right.
But to have a guy who has the hard nose, the tough running, the trying to get through, I'd rather have that guy than Jeff Wilson, who I believe is a pass catcher personally. Mm. And I love the Marlon Mack signing. I don't think he should play in this game. I think it should be Jordan Mason, TDP, and you bring out Jeff Wilson as a pass catcher, because that's what he's really good at. Jeff Wilson is a tremendous pass catching running back. Starting running back, I don't think so. Maybe Kyle proved me wrong on Sunday, and Jeff Wilson will run all over the Seahawks. But I'm thinking if Jordan Mason gets a chance, he'll be the starting running back, because it's a running back by committee, I think, at this point.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad idea. And the thing is, listen, I agree with you. Why did Jordan Mason, even TDP, in a game like that against the Bears, when your running back goes down in the second quarter, why don't all of the backs, why don't all of them get carries, right? Every single one of them. Jordan Mason's what? He's a big dude. So is TDP. Those are big. They're meant for that power running in that type of weather, right? Like, especially on what is it? First down, you can get probably 4 yards easily. On third and shorts, like those guys should be on the field. So the fact that Kyle only stuck with Jeff Wilson, I'm going to be honest, I don't like it. It honestly shocked me because that's the type of game. I'm sorry. You don't have to be an all-world, all-class, super fast guy. You don't even have to be the best running back on your team to see the field. You just need fresh legs because guys are going to be tired. Injuries are easier to happen in those types of games. So the fact that he only stuck with Jeff Wilson in that shocked me. I didn't like it. And it also gives me pause. Although I expect them to play in the Seahawks game, it gives me pause that Kyle's just going to be like, oh, sweet. I saw what Jordan Mason did in the preseason. I know what I have in TDP. Is he perfect? No, but we drafted this guy in the third round. I'm expecting a lot from this kid. Now, Elijah Mitchell did get hurt, so he's going to be out. He's removed from the picture for the foreseeable future. We did sign Marlon Mack, as you had just mentioned as well. Will he be elevated to the active roster on game day? The fact that he signed so early in the week gives me – I think he's got a shot. I won't say he will, but he's a dude that's been in the league for, I think, 5 years now. He's also a really good pass catching, I almost said wide receiver, running back as well, too. He's solid between the tackles. And that's one thing where I want to go back to Jeff Wilson a little bit. I honestly think he's a really good receiving back. As you had said, his hands are solid. They're honestly really soft. But I also think that he is a solid runner between the tackles, but he's lost a step since his injury. He has. And we saw that throughout the year last year as well, too. I believe I remember watching the Jaguars game last year, and I was like, man, he's just a little slower. We started running Debo a lot more, and Debo had the explosive plays we needed out of the backfield during that game and many other games throughout the rest of last season as well too. But when it comes to Jeff Wilson, it's almost like I hate to say this, but I honestly feel this. It's almost like Kyle is beholden, if that's the word I can use, or like really tied to some of these veteran players because he's seen what they can do, and he's so stuck on the fact that some of these veterans know exactly what Kyle wants out of his system that he's scared sometimes to put Jordan Mason, TDP in right away. They've got to go earn it. And I don't have any problem with them going to earn it, but based off of what they saw out of these guys, based out of what I've seen so far in the preseason, while I think Jordan Mason was the best running back we saw in the preseason by far,
absolutely,
like he deserves carries. I thought he deserved carries last week. Based off the injury we saw from Elijah, or based off of the injury that just happened to Elijah Mitchell, I'm still comfortable letting TDP be running back 3. I think right now he can be running back 3. Jeff Wilson can slide in that too. But just because you're listed as 1, 2, or 3 on the depth chart, in my personal opinion, doesn't mean these guys don't deserve carries. Elijah Mitchell was clear-cut running back 1, especially to start this season. Things can change throughout the course of the season. Right now, it's got to be all 3 of these guys. It's got to be rotating backs.
The Browns have Nick Chubb, and Kareem Hunt is still putting up like 20 fantasy points a game. Like, you can use 2 running backs. Right. You don't have to just rely on one guy. You know, the freaking Colts have Jonathan Taylor, the best running back in the league, and Nyheim Hines is still getting carries.
And Marlon Mack was there before that with those guys.
And Marlon Mack was there before. So for them just to get stubborn and go with one running back the whole game, it doesn't make sense. Okay, Jeff Wilson's running back 1. Jordan Mason should still be getting carries. Jordan Mason should still be able to just the Seahawks are bad, man. Like, it's just like if they are not just running the ball down the Seahawks' throat, like I just don't. If Jeff Wilson isn't cutting it, you switch immediately. If Jordan Mason isn't cutting it, you switch immediately. It has to. This is a team that can't stop the run. Like,
and Kyle's shown that he has that ability to do that. He's shown he has the ability to kind of ride the hot hand, right? We saw what he did with Matt Breida. Matt Breida came out of nowhere. Another undrafted back that we had came out of nowhere, took over, and then the following year led the team in rushing yards. Sound familiar? Because Elijah Mitchell just did that last year. Like, Kyle has shown the ability to get good production out of guys who are drafted, undrafted. Also, I want to look big picture as well, too, just real quick before we move on to the next.
I just want to read you something real quick before you switch. The Broncos had 2 running backs play, right? Javonte Williams,
Melvin Gordon, and Javonte Williams.
Javonte Williams had 7 carries for 43 yards, and Melvin Gordon had 12 carries for 58 yards. Right. You think that's a team that knows how to stop the run? Like,
not necessarily. Right.
The Seahawks can't stop them. They could have ran the ball all day.
And that's the thing. We're going to be
run.
committed to that. We're still going to be committed to running the ball. That was still the plan, even this last week as well, too. We just so happened to get down in the fourth quarter where we had to throw, where it had to be on Trey's shoulders at that point. We self-inflicted wounds put us in that scenario. That shouldn't be the case every week. But if I look big picture just at this running back position, which also ties into this week and throughout the season, listen, if it comes week 16, week 17, and somehow we are in a race for the number one seed or even a wild card spot between us and whatever other team, whether it's, the Rams, whoever else in our division, let's say we're still fighting for that. Wouldn't I like to see guys like Jordan Mason and TDP have developed throughout the course of that season, especially over these next 7 to 8 weeks while Elijah Mitchell is out, so that, let's say, hate to say it, but if another injury does happen and Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason is thrust into RB1 duties, wouldn't I like these guys to be ready for that moment, right? Maybe it's not going to be perfect right now, but I've seen Kyle do it. It wasn't perfect with Elijah Mitchell last year. Yes, Elijah Mitchell had a couple big runs in the Lions game week 1 last year, but there were multiple times where I can go back and say, man, he ran into his offensive lineman's back on that play. He didn't see the hole the right way. So I can't sit here and say Kyle has never seen or never had the patience with running backs in the past, because I've seen him do it. So with that in mind, I'm just saying, listen, I want these guys to get their reps. They were drafted for a reason. Jordan Mason was kept on this team over a running back they drafted for a reason. I don't want to get too mad or too upset about it because I don't know what he's going to do this next Sunday. I don't know. I expect them to play. I really do. And if they don't, I'm going to be more mad. We'll talk about it here on Tuesday again. Doesn't make any sense. But I also want to give him the credit to say there's a chance he could play them. I just don't understand why he didn't play them this past week. It didn't make sense not to.
And when we're talking about the real issues that led to a loss against the Bears, the number one is penalties, right? I think that's the number one. And the number 2 is the monsoon. I think 3 is the lack of a starting running back and a starting tight end. I think that if George Kittle's back this week, the run game will be better. I don't even think the run game was bad when Elijah Mitchell was out there. I thought it was fine.
It wasn't.
There was nothing about it that screamed this is mediocre or bad. If George Kittle comes back, maybe Jeff Wilson goes out there and the run game is fine. They're playing the Seahawks, man. They can't stop the run. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say it. They cannot stop the run. So you have to find a way to run the football on these guys so that Trey Lance can throw the ball. It's going to be 70 degrees, maybe a little bit of sprinkle. It's a perfect California day. So on a perfect California day, you should be able to run the ball with ease, and you should be able to throw the ball when guys are wide open. How many times have me and you talked about the fact that when you watch Kyle Shanahan's offense back, there's always guys wide open. There wasn't guys wide open in this game because of the rain. There's no rain on the rain will not be this bad on Sunday. So there's going to be guys open. And if Trey Lance is able to hit those guys who are wide open and they're able to run the ball, I just don't think there's anything to worry about. I think that this game will pretty much either calm Niner fans or make people freak the hell out.
And I think that's a perfect spot for me to say this. Whatever you thought of Trey Lance before this game, before the Chicago Bears game, I think you should still be right there. Whether you were on his side as a starting quarterback or not, I don't think it was the kid's first start as the starting QB1 in a monsoon. And before it was a monsoon, he was outplaying Justin Fields. You can't sit here and lie and tell me
he outplayed Justin Fields the whole game anyway.
And he still did, right?
Justin Fields the whole game anyway. And I love Justin Fields. Don't get me wrong. That was my guy. But Trey Lance was the better quarterback. And you could say, oh, well, he has better weapons to throw to. Who cares? He was the better quarterback on the field that day.
A casual take will tell you that they just won. A casual take will tell you, well, Justin Fields won. How did they win? There was literally 2 throws. We talked about it.
2 plays.
2 throws. That's it. Take those 2 plays away. How many yards did he throw? Like 40. Outside of that, like 40 yards, legitimately. So you can't sit here and tell me, oh, they also were 5 for 14 on third down. What were the Niners? 8 for 17. That's like 45%. Like, stop. You got to miss me with this. Oh, he's not a starting caliber quarterback. That's just not true. You have to look. If you can look at the game, if you can look at the stats and know how to talk about what you watched and what you saw, whatever you thought of Trey Lance before, you got to stay right there, because the weather should be different on Sunday. And before the weather was bad, have you ever seen Jawan Jennings catch a 44-yard pass? Ever?
Absolutely
No,
no.
he just did that this week with Trey Lance, right?
Yeah.
How did Trey Lance do that? He saw that they were playing a little off on him, and it allowed Juwan Jennings to get behind the defender, and he saw that, and he sailed it over. Like, he had just enough touch on the pass. That wasn't a play that Juwan Jennings just made because he was blazing fast. No, Trey saw something, identified it. That was a play that Trey made with his head. So for me, whether you were on him before, like you like Trey Lance, if you didn't like him before, go ahead and stay there. If you're on the train with Trey Lance, I think you got to still be there. And like you said, and I agree with you 100%. I've been saying this for maybe a couple days now. Yes, we talked about being like college. The emotional toll, I truly believe, is a real thing for the Seahawks, and not just the Seahawks. I think it can be for almost any team. Coming off of a game like that, they gave everything, and I'm going to give the Seahawks their credit. They played solid football. They're not great by any means. They played above their talent level. I'm just going to be honest. Well above it. Darrell Taylor had like a sack. He's not bad. He's probably their best pass rusher, but he's not great. He's pretty average. What's the dude's name? Al Ford, their like defensive tackle, had a couple stops. Like run. Yeah, Al Woods. He had a couple really good plays that were just like good for them, but I don't expect that on a week-to-week basis. Also, we know the Seattle Seahawks well. Yes, they know as well too, but this is an interdivisional game. This isn't playing the Broncos. I expect this to come out. I expect Kyle Shanahan, not even just Shanahan, I expect the 49ers to be so antsy to get back on the field after an embarrassing performance that they're going to go out and prove that they're not as undisciplined as they showed last week. Yes, They had a lot of yards and penalties last season as well. I believe they were third, but we have to say what were a lot of those penalties last year? Due to some of our cornerback play. We gave up a lot of yards. Yep, we gave up a lot of yards, pass interference plays, right? That should be shored up. It's going to be a little bit different this year. So when I look at that, I say, if this team is who Jamal Armstrong thinks they are, they're going to come out hot. They're going to come out with their foot on the gas. They're not going to let go, and you're going to see the real Trey Lance show up. Does he need to play a little bit better in rainy games? For sure. No question. He didn't play perfect, but he also had guys that dropped opportunities when they had a chance to step up, when Trey did deliver balls to them too. So we have to be fair on all accounts. Yes, Trey missed that Tyler Kroft throw, and Trey will tell you the plays that he missed. But other guys had plays that they missed as well too.
Yeah.
I think this week's going to be totally different.
I think they're going to come out and they're going to smack them in the mouth. I think they're going to come out there and they're going to knock the shit out of them. You know, there's no Jamal Adams at pass rushing. Their pass rush was terrible after Jamal Adams got hurt. Rarely did they ever get to Russell Wilson. And when they did, Russell Wilson would just run outside and make a play. And that's the thing, is they have the ability. Niners have the ability to do that. The Niners can now run outside the pocket, throw the ball whenever they want, right? I just don't see anything about the Seattle Seahawks that is good. There's nothing about this team that tells me that's a good football team or that's a team we should really worry about. Like, there's no fake crowd noise. There's not going to be any of this ridiculous penalties that the Seahawks get at home is amazing. I've never seen anything like it. It should be a little more fair for the penalties. Geno Smith is not going to have any time to throw the ball. Geno Smith is not going to be able to throw the ball more than 10, 20 yards against this defense. Yeah. It's just this Seahawks team, I think, is worse than the Bears team we played. And I understand the Bears we played in a monsoon, but the Bears have a better quarterback. Yeah. The Bears had better defense, and the Bears maybe had worse wide receivers, but the Bears O-line actually seemed like it held up pretty well. I was kind of surprised. I didn't think it would be that bad. And maybe that's, we only got 2 sacks. Yeah, and I don't know if that's the Niners' fault or what that is, but it seemed like the Bears O-line was actually pretty impressive. And so obviously we'll see what happens when they play Green Bay Sunday night. We'll get a better idea about the Bears and what the 49ers actually win against. The thing about the NFL is you have no idea who these teams are until week 4. We have no idea who the Seattle Seahawks are. We have no idea who the Bears are. We're going to find out over the next 3 weeks. One opponent does not make you just all of a sudden realize a team is good or bad. You can be like, wow, they look like shit. Like, people are like, yeah, the Broncos kind of look like shit. Nathaniel Hackett's kind of an idiot. But Nathaniel Hackett could come out next week and make some of the best coaching decisions. Sure. The NFL, specifically, more than any league in the world, you have to wait 4 weeks to judge people. Just like you have to wait a year or 2 years to judge a quarterback. Right. Patrick Mahomes was a phenomenon. That doesn't happen every year. There's not a guy who comes out and just absolutely shit stomps everybody. That doesn't happen. Josh Allen took 3 years to be the guy he is now, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Some would say the second best. It's just things take time. Yep. And as the 49ers son once said, relax. Aaron Rodgers said, relax. Niner fans need to relax. If they lose to the Seahawks, we will tell people it's DEFCON 1 because I don't think they're any good. I think they're terrible. I think they're absolute fucking dumpster fire. I think they might be like Jaguars, Jets bad. Like, I think they're terrible. But just relax. Ignore the people on Twitter. Ignore the Trey Lance takes. Ignore the fact that people are saying the 49ers were terrible because they lost the Bears. It's week 1.
Yep. And it's hard to it's very hard to my bad. Go ahead.
No. If they lose to the Seahawks, we will talk next week about where the panic is.
Right.
I am so stoked to go punch the Seahawks in the mouth, and you all should be, because this is the game where Trey Lance probably shuts everybody up, because this is a terrible football team that has troubled us for years. And could you imagine walking out of Levi Stadium at 4:00 on Sunday and seeing 31-7 or 48-7 or 48-15? I mean, if they blow these dudes out, is anyone who's a true Niner fan, not a fan of whatever it is with Jimmy Garoppolo that people like him over Trey, a true 49er fan, any true 49er fan going to tell you they don't like Trey Lance after he just blew out the team that has literally troubled us for the last 10 years? Because I'm not.
Right. No, one thing I wanted to add that you said as well, too. Listen, the teams that are really good will start pulling away the further we get into this season. We'll start seeing who the real teams are. Like you said, by week 4, you'll start seeing teams catch their groove. And I believe the 49ers are one of those teams that'll catch their groove. Some teams just so happen to come out hot. We saw what the Cardinals did last year, and then they fell off. How about the inverse of that? That was us last year. We started out rough, 3-5. We were able to flip a switch, lead our team to the NFC Championship. So you start seeing the real. Sometimes there's some wacky things that happen throughout the course of a season. But like you just said, listen, the conditions are going to be a bit better come this next week. I expect that we're going to start seeing the real 49ers. We're going to start seeing the real run game that we have. I wouldn't even say that I thought Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance, like the game was called poorly. I thought we called the game pretty well. I just thought some of the players that could have been on the field in the Bears game could have been rotated a bit better. And then you have to look at this too. Sometimes people are just opportunistic. And I think that's exactly what happened with the Seattle Seahawks. They happened to be opportunistic. They were able to force 2 fumbles on the goal line. I don't think that's going to happen to Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon back-to-back every week. I think sometimes those plays just happen, just very much like the Bears. They were able to be opportunistic as well, too. Force a fumble on Deebo Samuel, and I give the guy credit. He made a good play. I believe it might have been Eddie Jackson on that, too. Give him credit. He made a good play, punched the ball out. And then, obviously, Eddie Jackson made a great play on the interception. He read Trey's eyes the whole way, and Trey didn't really look him off. I remember going back to watch it again. He didn't look him off. They had dropped the safety lower down into coverage, and he threw the interception right to him. It was a good play, good play by him. But you look at the course of this season, you look at this game, and I just say, you know what? We're going to be fine. We're going to start seeing what type of team the 49ers will be going forward. I think we'll be more disciplined, and I'm just excited to see what happens going forward. I'll give you my last little thing. When it comes to Geno Smith, I have to see him do this more than 1 week in a row before I say, oh, he's back, right? He's never been a great NFL quarterback, but I'm happy for his success because it's good for him. He's been a journeyman since he was with the Jets. I don't think the Jets were a great organization that set him up to be a good quarterback, but he might be in a better situation to where he's not asked to do everything. He's just asked, in a sense, to be somewhat of a playmaker because he has a little bit more athleticism than I think some people want to give him credit for. And he made a couple plays outside of the pocket that were good. Like, I have to give him those credit. That touchdown that he threw to, I think it was Parkinson, he scrambled out of the pocket and just so happened to see him, and he threw the pass like that over his head, over the defender's head, to a wide open Parkinson that went for a touchdown. So if we can contain him, which I don't think we won't, I think we'll be able to contain him. We've got the pass rushers that are going to be able to bear down on them. Their offensive line, while they played solid last week, I can't sit here and say that their offensive line is real. I do think we'll still be able to own and dominate the trenches. I don't think we see the same Geno Smith. And because of what I said about not seeing enough from him yet, he's got my attention. He caught my eye. He played solid. But I think you're going to have to play better than solid to win this game. If he comes out and plays really solid to better this next week, then I'm going to say Geno Smith might be a little bit better. I just have more belief in this 49ers defense, who's been around for a while and then has also gelled for like a few years. We just so happen to add better cornerbacks.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens on Sunday, Jamal. This is probably the last time I'll talk to you before Sunday. So I'd love to hear a score prediction for this game from you. What do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be? I think the 49ers are -9, which is insane.
Ooh. Are you serious? We're -9?
It went up after the Seahawks won, which is insane.
That's wild to me. Wow.
I think the people in Vegas watched the same game we did and realized, yeah, the Seahawks actually aren't that good. The Denver Broncos just made some dumb decisions.
And it's funny, too, because I look at, like you said, and I'm not going to go on a little rant. It's hard to decide what the 49ers are because we played in a monsoon. I don't think that was the full product. I think we're going to continue to see the full product on better field conditions because you're not going to play in a monsoon every week. That's just the truth. Then you look at the Seahawks, they're not going to be playing Russell Wilson to where they're going to get themselves up higher, right? Their psyche's going to be like on full go because they're playing Russell Wilson. It's not going to be like that every week. So if I look and I project this game to come back more towards a median, I still think the 49ers are a much better roster, much better. I think that the Seahawks have a couple good players, and they drafted some guys that I really like, but it's year one for them. I don't expect too much out of them. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to have a field day against Tariq Woolen.
Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, Michael
Jackson.
I
actually like both of those guys, and I like the traits that Tariq Woolen has. He's like 6'3". He's fast as hell. He ran like low 4.3, so he's quick, but he's also not there mentally. I think the same way Brandon Ayuk is because it's year one for the kid. And I saw Russell Wilson pick on him with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy a couple times. So I think, much like I said last week again with Kyler Gordon, because he's their cornerback too, and I thought that there could be a couple times where Brandon Ayuk could get over on Kyler Gordon. That did happen. It's just that the field conditions change and we weren't allowed to consistently go to Brandon Ayuk. I think the same thing is going to happen this week, whether it's Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. I think both of them can potentially go off on Tariq Woolen. Bold prediction time. I'm going to give you my bold prediction. Should there be no rain, I'm going to say it. I think Trey Lance throws for 300-plus yards in this game. Yeah. Russell Wilson just threw for like 352 and could have thrown for 400.
Russell Wilson threw almost for 400. Russell Wilson should have thrown for 400.
Exactly. And I don't think that what I saw Russell Wilson do from the intermediate to short and the long range are things that I saw Trey Lance do, literally this last week. So I truly think that's my bold prediction. I think he throws for 300-plus yards. Unbold, I still think he throws for over 200, 240 to 250.
What about a score?
Score prediction. Yes, score prediction. I'm going to go, if it doesn't rain, I'm going to go 49ers. I'm going to go bold on this too. I'm going to say 49ers 31, Seahawks 14. 31-14, 49ers.
Yeah, I was going 32-10. So
Woo. Okay, I like it.
I don't respect the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to be honest with you on this show. Anyone who watches this show, I don't respect them. I think they're fucking terrible. I don't know what more I have to say. I've texted everyone who I know that's Seahawks fan. Your team is fucking garbage. I'm glad you won. Congratulations. That team is terrible. Like, I trust my own football mind to understand that team fucking sucks. They are terrible. Ooh. They have nothing about them that scares me. Their tight ends are garbage. Noah Fant is the most overrated tight end I've ever seen. He was supposed to be George Kittle, and he's fucking not. The offensive line is a bunch of rookies. Their defense is a bunch of garbage, like a bunch of trash. They're literally putting trash on the football field. They couldn't stop a runny nose yesterday.
Right.
It's just Nathaniel Hackett's an idiot. You think that Russell Wilson went out there on 4th and 5, they weren't going to win that game? Because they absolutely were going to win that game.
That was so wild to me.
But for some reason, Nathaniel Hackett wanted just to dink and dunk the Seahawks when they're terrible.
Right.
That game plan in the fourth quarter was so weird. And maybe the Seahawks win and beat us, and then I look stupid, but I just don't see it. I don't see a world where this Seahawks team is able to beat Kyle Shanahan, Trey Lance, and that defense. I just don't see it. So
right. It's not Drake.
We'll
we're not putting Drake Kirkpatrick and what's his face and Josh Norman out there anymore. So the one spot where last year I would have said, okay, even with Geno Smith, maybe they'll have a chance was corner. Well, last I checked, DK Metcalf has never had a really good game against Emmanuel Mosley. I was there in the building last year when Mosley was locking his ass up. Mosley had a really good game against him last year. And then we also added Charvarius Ward, who I believe will be covering DK most of the time. I think he'll be covering most of the time. So that's the one spot where I say, okay, I think Geno Smith kind of took a little bit. I don't say he took advantage, but he was throwing pretty often to DK more than he did to Lockett. But I like Emmanuel Mosley's chances against Tyler Lockett. Now, Tyler Lockett's a good receiver, so I'm not going to say he's not going to get his, and so is DK. But I look at that matchup and I say, that's more of a wash now. And if that's a wash, I don't see how we don't start teeing off on them if we get them down early. I think we get more than 2 sacks, and I don't think that they rush for 100 yards on us.
Totally. Jamal, if they want to check out your stuff, how can they do it?
Check me out on Twitter, Young Jaw 49er. My name right here, Young JA, no spaces, Young Jaw, and then the numbers 49, the letters ER. You can find me there on Twitter. Starting next week, I will be going on with Amin the Dream. We'll be going every other week on Wednesdays. I believe we decided Wednesdays. I'll get back to you guys. I'll put stuff out on my Twitter on a specific time. You can find me here Tuesdays with Nate, Wednesdays with Amin the Dream every other week. And then you can find me on Twitter, Young Jock 49er. Always love talking football with you, Nate. Look forward to seeing you. I'll be seeing you at the game on Sunday, and then we'll talk again on Tuesday.
Absolutely. It'll be super fun to be back at Levi's Stadium. I definitely miss being there. You can find me at Niner Nate 49 on Twitter. Always giving some hot takes, pissing a lot of people off lately. It's been a lot of fun. I don't get to do spaces anymore because of my new job and the fact that I work for the government. I work for the government. And I can't really say much else besides that, and so I'm not able to do spaces as much anymore, which kind of sucks. So I listen to every take every one of you have. I've listened to everything. I read everything. I just don't comment on it as much anymore. But there's some wild shit being said, and I think the 49ers are about to shut people up. You can catch us Thursday. We're trying to get a real Seahawks fan on, Jason Puckett, to join me and Kevin. I'm just worried about Kevin's reaction to a real Seahawks fan and how he'll act. So the plan of now is to have Jason Puckett, me, and Kevin on Thursday night to talk all about this Seahawks game, really break it down, talk about all the ins and outs of this awful Seahawks team. And so we look forward to you checking that show out as well. Thanks for listening. As always, Hype Trainer stops, baby.